This is part 13 of the I Own an Abandoned Motel series. If you haven't and would like to check out the rest, a link to the playlist is in the description below. I own an abandoned motel, and I've listened to the voices in the flames. Written by Wine Dark Sea, 1239. The smoke hit me first, filling my lungs with enough force to push me back. Cottage 14 was on fire, and although it was set back away from the others, its proximity to the bare branches of the adjacent woods made me fear a greater conflagration. Jake and I sputtered, unable to move, my body desperate for clean air. Renee, however, pressed forward, unaffected. Though I could barely see him, I felt him brush past me. I caught his sleeve. "What are you doing?" I coughed. "I didn't build it," he said, almost as if in a daze. "What?" "This cottage. I didn't build it." "It's still on fire." "An illusion." "Easy to say when you're not the one suffocating," Jake shouted. "Trust me." He took my arm and guided me towards the cottage, wreathed in smoke. Jake cursed, but followed behind us. I pulled my sweater over my mouth and squinted, eyes stinging. As we approached the cottage, I glimpsed the bright orange flames licking at the flaking paint. But, to my surprise, I felt no heat. Neither did I see the paint blacken and curl, nor the old wood beginning to collapse from such a powerful fire. Renee was right. "You have our attention." Renee addressed the cottage. "I actually think they only speak French," I wheezed. Renee raised his eyebrows and gave me a quizzical look, but shouted something in French. The smoke and flames retreated, as though pulled back inside the cottage by an invisible force, leaving Jake and I heaving, gulping down the fresh air. Renee examined the cottage with an inscrutable expression on his face that veered between skepticism and curiosity. When I was finally able to breathe, I told him about my prior experience in Cottage 14. I told him about the hands in the dark, the sad wraiths writhing in flames, their admonition to not be alone. "The notebook says not to speak to them." Renee chuckled. "Well, I've already violated that rule, haven't I?" I suppose that if this was their way of getting our attention, then they have something to say. And I finally have someone who can help me understand them. But if Renee didn't build this cottage, then who did? Jake interjected. Then again, something about this place doesn't feel like, well, like her. Renee nodded. "No, it does not," he agreed. "How can you tell?" I asked. "I don't feel like gnawing my arm off when I look at it," Jake replied. "Okay then." "This is something else entirely," Renee said, gazing at the now darkened cottage. The only remains of the fire that had blazed moments ago were tiny tendrils of smoke escaping from cracks in the windows. "We should go inside." "Go ahead," Jake said, pulling out a pack of cigarettes. "I'll wait for you out here." I hesitated, remembering the impenetrable dark of my last encounter, the feeling of being unmoored from physical reality. Renee held out his hand. I took it and inhaled deeply. "Don't let go," I whispered. "Not a chance," he said. We stepped inside, and it was as it had been the last time I entered. Darkness so thick, it was as though we were immersing ourselves in deep sea water. Once again, there was no sign of the windows, no sign of the door that closed behind us, sealing us inside. I could not see Renee, but I felt his grip and the wooden floor beneath my feet. I steadied my breathing, tethering myself to my sense of touch. Though I was not laying down, as the notebook mandated, hands began to pat my shoulders. I felt them comb through my hair, little murmurs at my ears of reassurance. They found my hand holding tightly to Renee's, and that seemed to unnerve them. They tried to pry us away. "I don't think they like me very much," Renee said in a low voice. "Probably because you're a cold, dead body." The crowd of voices began to rise, increasingly agitated by Renee's presence. "I'm going to address them," he said. "I'll translate." I squeezed his hand, still too afraid to transgress an instruction of the notebook myself. The following conversation took place in French. For the sake of convenience, I am transcribing Renee's translation here. "I apologize if my presence is unwelcome here. I promise that I have come only to assist Nora." At the sound of his voice, the murmurs died down. In a sudden flash, the darkness around us transformed into a bright, white light of equal thickness, like being trapped in a cloud. Before us was the shadowy form of a human, the figure that had addressed me before. Now, she appeared to have more substance, though I did still not make out any discernible features. "We have no quarrel with you, blood drinker." Her voice was still raspy, but more robust. It was low and calm. "Who are you?" he asked. "We began as you began, mortal, long ago. We lived here together, on this land. French made us native peoples, living on what we could catch in the river and hunt in the forest, with some meager crops when those failed. But though we were peaceful, we fell victim to enemies for reasons long forgotten, pointless as all violence is. We perished in agony, we perished in flame. When our mortal bodies were consumed, we knew no peace. We were bound here, to this patch of land embracing the mighty river, weakened, wandering wraiths shuddering in the dark. As the centuries passed, we forgot our human lives, forgot the sadness along with the joy. Weak as we were, we became guardians of sorts, perhaps saving a harvest here, fishing a child out of the water there. It was all we could do. Then she came, the creature who torments you. She is an old, mean thing. You call her a witch, but she is far more than that. Her name is Ancient. You know this, blood drinker. She claimed this place as her own, but she is mistaken. This land belongs to no one. She took no notice of us, as a mountain lion takes no notice of the crickets chirping underfoot. But her power, unwittingly, stirred something inside of us. It strengthened us. For the first time, we were capable of manifesting ourselves, and we did so to the mortal woman who cared for this land. She was frightened at first, as they all are. We told her we wanted to help. She spoke our tongue. She told us that this place was poisoned by evil now. She was full of despair. She feared for her young son, but still, fearful though she was, she did not hesitate to extend us the hospitality of her hearth. She offered us her own home. She bid us to step out of the shuddering dark. She knew we were not of the one who had cursed them. "Ellen?" I whispered. I could make out an almost imperceptible nod of the spirit's head. The spirit continued, now addressing me with Renee continuing to translate. At first, we did not understand her offer. We did not remember what it meant to be extended such a kindness. We were creatures of the shadows, but at her hearth we remembered our own long-lost humanity. We remembered belonging. We asked her for a home, and that every so often we could have a reminder of human touch, of the miracle of the living. She readily agreed. They built this place for us, set back in the trees, a place of our own. They visited us every so often. We remembered warmth again. We did not have much to give them for such a gift, for though we were not as weak as we once had been, we were still just flickering candles against the inferno that threatened them. We gave them our blessing, a blessing that would be conferred by their blood. They would suffer under the burden of this curse, even die, that we were powerless to undo, but their souls would not be dragged down to perdition. Whatever happened here, they would not know the eternal flames. The thing you call the witch, the thing that grins in the dark, she knows we are here, but we are beyond her reach. She threatened your people never to speak with us, making us appear as simply one more entity in service to her. And so, we have watched and grieved with those you loved. We tried to help you. We used every ounce of strength we could muster to awaken this blood drinker, her old foe who slept unwillingly here. We understood the danger and tried to warn you to stay away until the blood drinker could make himself whole. But we do not know the words of your tongue. Is that what you meant? I asked, tightening my grip on Renee's hand, tears stinging my eyes. When you said I should not let myself be alone. Renee looked at me with guilt and compassion, and then translated for the spirit. You are stronger together, she said, though I understand that we have regrettably caused a painful loss. Martina was a generous soul, and she is now at peace. Have no fear. At the sound of her name, something loosened within me, and I couldn't fight the sobs that followed. At peace. I could almost sense her with me, reassuring me, and I knew the spirit was telling the truth. The light on in the cottage, I said, gathering words through my tears. The light that brought us together. That was you too, wasn't it? You are correct. The events of the past month flashed before me, as though pages being flipped in a book. I sighed. My heart was full. Fear, grief, love, friendship, all were fitted together, crowded inside of me. I had one more question. Am I going to die? All must die. No, I mean, I saw the phantom head. Is that a curse? Is it ever wrong? The spirit flickered, and I knew our time was short. It is a premonition of what will come, and we have no power to stop it. A hot wave of anxiety rushed through my body. Renee squeezed my hand. Do not fear. Cling to each other. Remember our blessing, and let it strengthen you for what must pass. Hands pressed themselves into my shoulders and touched my cheeks with affection. I felt myself falling backwards, but I was not afraid. I opened my eyes on the floor of the cottage, my back against the wood. Rene was already sitting up beside me, his expression troubled. The cottage had returned to the appearance of being abandoned, the door once again visible. Rene helped me up. I opened my mouth to say something to him, but I was interrupted by a chilling scream. "Jake!" I cried. With a preternatural leap, Rene threw open the cottage door, and I rushed out behind him. Jake was nowhere to be found. I felt something underneath my boot and found a cigarette still lit, embers glowing in the waning dark. Jake screamed again, and this time we could make him out. He was being dragged away, his hands scraping the frozen ground, desperate to hold on to anything. He was enveloped in a sickly green flame. The flame surrounded him, bobbing up and down. With a lurch, I recognized the rotting things at their core, still displaying faces of agony, though now collapsed and decomposing. Turnips. "Fuck," I yelled. Rene went after him with me following distantly. He recouped the distance between them with hardly any effort, but the turnips were not afraid of him like last time. They unleashed a buzzing drone that cut through my ears and threw me to the ground. Even Rene put his hands up to his ears, but pushed forward, as though he were pushing against some unknown force separating us from Jake. Jake fought ferociously against his captors, though he too writhed with pain, scratching at his ears. I noticed his hands elongating, claws emerging, his face lengthening into the muzzle of the beast, human cries transforming into the howling of a wounded animal. Rene lunged toward Jake, and for a moment I thought he had him. But just as it seemed like he would make contact, the green flame blazed upwards with a gust and bore them away into a great vortex. The putrid faces of the turnips peering back at us in mockery. Rene fell to the ground with a thud. Jake was gone.